Declan Ross was 30 years old and lived in a converted garage apartment behind a craftsman house in a quiet Portland neighborhood where everyone knew everyone else's business. He worked as a landscape architect, spending his days designing gardens he couldn't afford for clients who barely noticed him. His hands were permanently stained with soil. His truck smelled like mulch and gasoline. His apartment had one window that faced a brick wall, a shower that never quite got hot enough, and a refrigerator that hummed too loudly at 3 a.m. He paid his rent on time, kept to himself, and had exactly 3 friends who occasionally remembered to text him. It had been almost 3 years since his last relationship, not because he was bitter or broken, but because he'd simply run out of energy for pretending to be more successful, more interesting, more worthy of someone's time. Dating apps felt like job interviews where he never made it past the first round. Women smiled politely when he mentioned his work, then their eyes glazed over when they realized he wasn't some wealthy developer. He'd been ghosted, stood up, and told it's not you, it's me enough times to recognize the pattern. Eventually, he stopped swiping. Loneliness felt cleaner than rejection. Then his sister Brianna showed up at his door on a Tuesday evening with takeout and an agenda. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You're becoming a ghost," she said, unpacking containers of Thai food on his tiny kitchen counter. "When's the last time you went anywhere that wasn't work or the grocery store?" Declan shrugged, pulling plates from the cabinet. "I'm fine." "You're not fine, you're existing." She pointed a spring roll at him. "There's a woman who just moved into the main house. Single, around your age. I think you two would get along." He groaned. "I'm not doing the neighbor thing." "One conversation, that's all I'm asking." Brianna's eyes softened. "If it goes badly, I'll stop meddling for 6 months. Deal." The next Saturday afternoon, Declan was in the backyard trimming hedges when he heard the back door of the main house open. He looked up and saw her for the first time. She stood on the porch holding a glass of lemonade, wearing high-waisted jeans and a cream-colored long-sleeved blouse despite the summer heat. Her black hair was pulled into a loose bun, a few strands falling around her face. She had warm brown skin and dark eyes that seemed cautious, measuring him from a distance. "You must be the landscaper," she called out. Declan set down his shears and walked closer. "Declan, I live in the garage apartment." "Zara," she said, not offering her hand. "I just moved in last week." They talked for exactly 7 minutes about the garden, the neighborhood, the coffee shop 2 blocks over. Her voice was soft but careful, like someone who'd learned to guard her words. When she went back inside, Declan stood there longer than necessary, wondering why someone would wear long sleeves in 80-degree weather. Over the next 2 weeks, they developed a pattern. She'd come outside in the late afternoons when the heat had faded, always with lemonade or iced tea, always in long sleeves. They'd talk about small things, books, music, the elderly couple next door who argued loudly about their garden gnomes. Zara worked remotely as a medical illustrator, drawing detailed anatomical diagrams for textbooks and surgical manuals. She spoke about bodies with clinical precision, like they were puzzles to solve rather than living things to feel. "I'm good at drawing what's broken," she said once, and something in her tone made Declan's chest tighten. He noticed other things too, how she never let him get too close, how she positioned herself so her left side always faced away, how she flinched slightly when car doors slammed too loud. He didn't ask questions. He'd learned that people revealed themselves when they were ready, not when you pushed. One evening in early August, Zara invited him inside for dinner. Her house was sparse but intentional. White walls, minimal furniture, plants clustered near windows like they were reaching for escape routes. She'd made pasta with roasted vegetables, and they ate at her small dining table while rain tapped against the windows. "Can I ask you something?" Zara said suddenly, setting down her fork. "Why haven't you asked about the sleeves?" Declan met her eyes. "I figured you'd tell me if you wanted to." She studied him for a long moment, then stood up. "I need to show you something, but I need you to understand that once I do, this changes. Most people can't handle it." "You don't have to." "I do," she took a shaky breath, "because I like you, and I'd rather you run now than later." Zara slowly unbuttoned her left sleeve and rolled it up past her elbow. The scars were extensive, thick, raised lines of scar tissue that twisted from her wrist up her forearm, disappearing under the fabric. But that wasn't what made Declan's breath catch. Then she lifted the left side of her blouse. The scarring continued up her ribs, across her shoulder, spreading like roots across her skin. But more than that, her entire left breast was gone. The chest wall was flat, marked with surgical scars and what looked like burned tissue, creating a landscape of trauma across one side of her body. "House fire when I was 19, she said, her voice steady but distant. "My boyfriend at the time said it. We'd been fighting, he thought I was cheating, I wasn't." She lowered her shirt slowly. "I had degree burns over 30% of my body, multiple skin grafts. They removed the breast because the tissue was too damaged. The reconstruction surgeries never took. After the fourth one, I just stopped trying." The rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows. Declan remained seated, his hands flat on the table. "The police found evidence that he'd planned it," Zara continued, sitting back down but not meeting his eyes. "Accelerant, blocked exits. He got 20 years, he'll be eligible for parole in 3. She finally looked at him. "No one wants to date me, not like this. I've tried. They see the scars and they either treat me like I'm made of glass or they can't hide their revulsion. One guy actually cried, said he couldn't handle it." She pulled her sleeve back down, buttoning it with practiced movements. "So there it is, the full horror show. If you want to leave, I understand. Most people do." Declan stood up slowly and walked around the table. He knelt beside her chair, gently taking her right hand in both of his. "I'm not going anywhere," he said quietly. "And if I did, I think I'd regret it for the rest of my life." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to say that to be nice." "I'm not being nice, I'm being honest." He squeezed her hand. "You survived something that would have destroyed most people. That doesn't make you broken. It makes you someone who fought like hell to stay alive." She pulled her hand away and stood abruptly, walking to the window. Her shoulders were shaking. "You say that now, but when you actually have to look at it, when you have to touch," her voice broke. Declan stood and walked to her, stopping just behind her. "Can I hug you?" She turned, confusion and fear mixing on her face. "Why would you want to?" "Because you look like you need one." Zara hesitated, then nodded once. Declan wrapped his arms around her carefully, feeling her entire body tense before slowly, gradually relaxing against him. She buried her face in his shoulder and cried, not the polite tears of someone trying to hold it together, but deep, shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and buried. He held her through all of it, one hand stroking her hair, the other steady against her back. When she finally pulled away, her face was blotchy and her eyes were red, but something had shifted. "I haven't let anyone hold me like that since before the fire," she whispered. "Then we're starting something new," Declan said. They stood in her living room as rain drummed harder against the roof. Zara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I don't know how to do this, how to let someone in." "Neither do I," Declan admitted, "but maybe we figure it out together." She searched his face for a long moment, looking for the lie, the pity, the inevitable moment when he'd realize what he'd signed up for and run. But she didn't find it. "Stay," she said finally. "Just for tonight. We don't have to do anything. I don't want to be alone." Declan nodded. They moved to the couch and Zara curled against him tentatively, like she was testing whether he'd pull away. He didn't. They watched the storm outside, and somewhere between the thunder and the quiet, they both fell asleep. When Declan woke in the early morning light, Zara was still pressed against his side, her breathing slow and even. He stayed perfectly still, not wanting to disturb the first piece he'd seen on her face. In the days that followed, they didn't rush into anything. No dramatic declarations, no pressure. Zara started leaving her door unlocked when she knew he was around. Declan brought her coffee in the mornings before work. They ate dinner together most nights, talking about everything and nothing. One evening 2 weeks later, Zara asked him to come over after dark. When he arrived, she was standing in her living room with candles lit and soft music playing. She wore a simple black dress, and for the first time, it was short-sleeved. "I want to show you all of it," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "Not because I think I have to, but because I want to stop hiding from you." Declan walked closer, his heart hammering. "Only if you're ready." "I'm terrified," she admitted, "but I trust you." Slowly, carefully, Zara turned around and unzipped the back of her dress. She let it fall to her waist, revealing the full extent of the scarring across her back, her left shoulder, the absent breast, the patchwork of skin grafts and burned tissue that told the story of her survival. Declan stepped forward and gently traced his fingers along her shoulder blade, following the path of one of the scars. Zara shuddered but didn't pull away. "You're beautiful," he said softly. "Declan." "I mean it." He moved to face her, looking directly into her eyes. "Every part of you, the parts that hurt and the parts that healed, all of it." Zara's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she was smiling. "I never thought anyone would see me this way and stay." "Then you didn't know me yet." She reached up and pulled him into a kiss, tentative at first, then deeper, more certain. When they finally broke apart, she was breathing hard, her forehead pressed against his. "I need you to know something," she whispered. "The scars aren't just physical. Sometimes I wake up screaming. Sometimes I smell smoke that isn't there. Sometimes I can't let anyone touch me for days. I'm still not going anywhere." She pulled back slightly, studying his face in the candlelight. "What if it's too much? What if I'm too much?" Declan cupped her face gently with both hands. "Then we'll figure it out, together." And in that moment, with the candles flickering and the night settling around them, Zara finally allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this kind of love. The following weeks unfolded like pages in a book Declan never knew he needed to read. He learned Zara's rhythms, the mornings when she woke gasping from nightmares, the way she needed space on Tuesdays because that was the day of the week the fire happened, the small victories when she wore short sleeves to the grocery store. He learned that her left side had reduced sensation, that sometimes she couldn't feel his touch there at all, and other times it hurt when fabric brushed against the grafted skin. They made love for the first time on a Sunday afternoon with sunlight streaming through her bedroom window. Zara had been terrified, convinced he would change his mind once he saw her completely naked in full light. Instead, Declan kissed every scar he could reach, traced the damaged skin with reverence, and held her afterward while she cried tears she couldn't name. "I've never felt this safe," she whispered against his chest. Declan's landscape business started picking up, which meant longer hours, but he always came home to Zara. They fell into domesticity without discussing it, his clothes appearing in her closet, her coffee mug on his bathroom counter, keys exchanged without ceremony. His sister Brianna visited and hugged Zara like they'd been friends for years. Then October arrived, and with it the letter. Declan was at a job site when Zara called, her voice tight and mechanical. "Can you come home? I need you." He made it back in 20 minutes. Zara was sitting on her living room floor surrounded by scattered papers, her face pale. She held up an official-looking document with trembling hands. "Cameron's parole hearing is scheduled for December 15th, she said. "They want me to submit a victim impact statement. They want me to appear." Cameron Wexler. The name alone made Declan's jaw clench. The man who'd tried to murder her, who'd sentenced her to years of surgeries and trauma, who still somehow managed to reach into her life from prison. "You don't have to go," Declan said, kneeling beside her. "I know, but if I don't, he might get out early, and I can't," her voice broke. "I can't have him out there, not yet, maybe not ever." Over the next month, Declan watched Zara prepare her statement. She wrote draft after draft, crying through each one. Some nights she couldn't sleep at all. Other nights she woke screaming, and Declan held her until dawn. The hearing was in Salem, 2 hours north. Declan drove while Zara stared out the window in silence, wearing a black turtleneck that covered everything. In the courthouse hallway, she gripped his hand so tightly his fingers went numb. Then Declan saw him. Cameron Wexler was being led down the corridor in handcuffs, flanked by guards. He was thinner than Declan expected, with hollow cheeks and graying hair despite being only 38. But what stopped Declan's heart was the way Cameron's eyes locked onto Zara and the smile that spread across his face. Not remorseful, not guilty, triumphant. Zara made a sound like she'd been punched. Before Declan could react, Cameron spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Still as beautiful as ever, Zara. I see you've moved on. Does he know? Does he know what you did?" "Keep walking," one of the guards barked, shoving Cameron forward. But the damage was done. Zara was hyperventilating, her entire body shaking. Declan pulled her into an empty conference room while a victim advocate rushed over with water. "What did he mean?" Declan asked gently once Zara could breathe again. "What does he think you did?" Zara's face crumpled. "I need to tell you something I should have told you before." She clutched the water bottle like a lifeline. "The night of the fire, I wasn't innocent, not completely." Declan's stomach dropped, but he stayed silent. "Cameron and I were fighting because I was planning to leave him. He was controlling, jealous, getting worse every day. I'd packed a bag and hidden it at my friend's apartment." Tears streamed down her face. "That night, he confronted me. He'd found the bag. He went into a rage and I grabbed a kitchen knife. I told him if he tried to stop me from leaving, I'd use it." She was sobbing now, the words tumbling out. "He laughed at me, called me weak, said I'd never have the guts, so I did it. I stabbed him in the shoulder, not deep but enough to draw blood. He stumbled backward and I ran to the bedroom and locked the door." Declan's mind raced, trying to reconcile this with what he knew. 20 minutes later, I smelled smoke," Zara continued. "By the time I got the bedroom door open, the hallway was an inferno. He'd poured gasoline everywhere and lit it. He'd blocked the front door. I only survived because I went through a window." She looked at Declan with devastated eyes. "He almost died getting out, too. The fire department found him unconscious in the yard. He spent weeks in the ICU with smoke inhalation and second-degree burns." "Zara." "At the trial, his lawyer tried to claim it was self-defense, that I'd attacked him first and he'd panicked. The prosecution proved he'd bought the gasoline days earlier, that he'd planned it. But Cameron's been telling anyone who will listen that I provoked him, that I'm the violent one." She grabbed Declan's hands desperately. "I'm not proud of stabbing him, but I was terrified. I thought he was going to kill me that night anyway. Does that change how you see me? Does it make me as bad as him?" Declan pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "No. God, no. You defended yourself against an abuser. That's not the same thing, not even close." "But I hurt him first. He was going to hurt you worse. You knew it. Your instincts were right." Declan pulled back to look at her. "And even if you'd done more than that, even if you'd fought back harder, you'd still be the victim here. He tried to burn you alive." The hearing was brutal. Zara had to read her statement while Cameron stared at her from across the room, that same cold smile on his face. She described the surgeries, the chronic pain, the PTSD, the years of therapy. When she lifted her shirt to show the parole board her scars, 2 of the members visibly flinched. Cameron's lawyer argued that his client had served his time, had been a model prisoner, had completed anger management courses. Then Cameron himself spoke, his voice smooth and practiced. "I take full responsibility for my actions that night. I was a different person then, angry, hurt by what I perceived as betrayal. I've had years to reflect on the pain I caused Zara, and I carry that guilt every day." It sounded rehearsed, hollow, but Declan saw one parole board member nodding. The decision wouldn't come for weeks. On the drive home, Zara was silent for the first hour. Then, quietly, she said, "If he gets out, I'm leaving Portland. I'll have to disappear. Start over somewhere he can't find me." Declan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "We'll figure it out, together." "Declan, I can't ask you to upend your life." "You're not asking. I'm telling you. Wherever you go, I go." She started crying again, but this time she was smiling too. 3 weeks later, the letter arrived. Parole denied. Cameron Wexler would serve his full sentence, 7 more years. Zara collapsed in relief, and Declan held her on the living room floor while she sobbed. That night, they celebrated with cheap wine and takeout pizza, and for the first time in months, Zara's laughter sounded unguarded. But 2 days later, Declan came home from work to find Zara sitting at her kitchen table with an expression he couldn't read. In front of her was a photograph. "I got this in the mail today," she said, sliding it across the table. "No return address." It was a surveillance photo of Declan and Zara leaving her house, taken from across the street. On the back, written in block letters, "7 years is a long time, but not forever. I'll be thinking of you both." Declan's blood ran cold. He's still in prison. How? He has friends, family, people who believe his version of the story. Zara's voice was eerily calm. "This is a message. He wants me to know he's not done with me." That night, they filed a police report. The detective was sympathetic but realistic. "Unless someone makes an actual threat or attempt, there's not much we can do. Document everything. Consider a restraining order for when he's released." "That's 7 years away," Declan said. "I know, but these things, they have a way of not staying buried." Over the next month, 2 more photos arrived. One of Zara at the coffee shop, one of Declan at a job site. The message was clear: we're watching. Zara stopped sleeping through the night. She installed security cameras, changed her phone number, started checking over her shoulder constantly. The peace they'd built together was cracking. Then, on a cold November evening, everything shattered. Declan was working late on a commercial property downtown when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Is this Declan Ross?" A woman's voice, older, refined. "Who's asking?" "My name is Patricia Wexler. I'm Cameron's mother." Before Declan could hang up, she continued quickly, "Please just listen. I'm not calling to threaten you or defend my son. I'm calling because I need you to know the truth, the real truth." Declan's hand tightened around the phone. "I know the truth. Your son tried to murder Zara." "No," Patricia's voice was steady. "That's what everyone thinks, but Cameron didn't start that fire. Zara did." The world tilted. "That's insane." "I have proof. Security footage from a neighbor's camera that was never submitted at trial because Cameron's public defender was incompetent. Footage showing Zara leaving the house 20 minutes before the fire started, then coming back. Footage showing her standing outside, watching it burn before she called 911. Patricia's voice cracked. "My son is many things. He was controlling, possessive, toxic. But he didn't start that fire. He was passed out drunk inside. She tried to kill him." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because those photographs, that's not Cameron's doing. That's Zara's. She's been sending them to herself. She does this every few years, manufactures threats, plays the victim, gets sympathy. Then she moves to a new city and starts over." Patricia was crying now. "Please, Mr. Ross, check her background, really check it, before it's too late." Declan hung up, his hands shaking. It was crazy. Had to be. A desperate mother trying to save her guilty son. But that night, while Zara slept, Declan couldn't stop thinking about it. He opened his laptop and started searching. Zara Malhotra, 29 years old, born in Sacramento, moved to Eugene at 18, then Portland 4 years ago. He found news articles about the fire. They matched Zara's story exactly. Cameron convicted, sentenced to 20 years, but there was something else, a sealed case from when Zara was 23. He couldn't access the details, but the charges had been dismissed. Arson. Filed, then dropped within weeks. His stomach churned. He kept digging. A blog post from an ex-boyfriend in Eugene, dated 5 years ago, quickly deleted but archived. "She's not what she seems. The scars, the story, something's wrong. She lies. She manipulates. If you're dating her, run." Another search. Another name. Another city. A pattern emerging like a photograph developing in chemicals. No, this couldn't be real. But then Declan opened Zara's closet, something he'd done 100 times before, and this time he really looked. Behind her winter coats, there was a small locked box. He'd noticed it before but never questioned it. Everyone had private things. His hands moved on autopilot. He found where she kept spare keys in a kitchen drawer. The third one fit. Inside the box, a burner phone, photographs of himself from angles he didn't know existed. A notebook filled with detailed notes about his routines, his job sites, his sister's address. And beneath it all, a passport with Zara's photo but a different name, Zara Kendrick. And driver's licenses from 3 different states, 3 different names, same face. The bedroom door opened. Zara stood there in one of his t-shirts, her hair messy from sleep. When she saw what he was holding, her expression didn't change. She simply smiled, not the vulnerable, careful smile he'd come to know, but something else entirely. Something cold and calculated. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," she said softly. "You lasted longer than most. Usually they find the box within the first month." Declan's mouth went dry. "Who are you?" "I'm Zara, that part's real. The scars are real, the fire was real." She walked closer, and Declan instinctively stepped back. "But Cameron didn't start it, I did. And he didn't try to kill me, I tried to kill him." "Why?" "Because I needed the story." She said it so simply, like it was obvious. "Do you know what it's like to be invisible your whole life? To be ordinary? I was nothing before the fire, after." She gestured to her scars. "I became someone people noticed, someone people cared about, someone special." "You're insane." "I'm strategic." Zara sat on the edge of the bed, utterly calm. "Cameron was my boyfriend, yes, but he wasn't abusive. He was boring, mediocre. When I stabbed him that night, it wasn't self-defense. It was practice. I needed to see if I could do it. Then I soaked the apartment in accelerant and lit a match. I cut myself badly on the window getting out, that part wasn't planned. But it worked. Better than I imagined." Declan's mind was racing, looking for exits, for weapons, for anything. "The surgeries, the mastectomy." "Oh, those are real. Severe burns require severe treatment, but I've never regretted it." She touched her chest almost fondly. "These scars are my credentials. They're why you believed me, why everyone believes me." "The photographs, the threats." "Me, obviously. I needed to escalate the story, make it more dramatic, make you want to protect me more." She tilted her head, studying him. "And it worked, didn't it? You fell so hard. You would have followed me anywhere." Declan's voice was barely a whisper. "How many others?" "You're number 4. Well, 5 if you count Cameron. Each one taught me something new, how to be more convincing, how to read people better, how long I could maintain the performance." She stood up. "The problem is, eventually they all figure it out just like you did, and then I have to move on." "You won't get away with this. I'll tell the police everything." "And say what?" Zara laughed. "That the burn victim is actually the villain. That the woman who stood in front of a parole board and showed her scars is somehow the monster. Who do you think they'll believe?" She stepped closer. "I've been perfecting this for 9 years, Declan. I know exactly how to play it. By tomorrow, you'll be the unstable ex who couldn't handle my trauma. There will be text messages you don't remember sending, witnesses who saw you acting erratic, and me. I'll be the brave survivor who barely escaped another dangerous man." Declan's hand closed around his phone in his pocket, feeling for the record button. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're going to leave tonight and never come back. And you're going to stay silent, because if you don't..." Her expression finally shifted, showing something dark underneath. "I still have accelerant, and I know where your sister lives." The threat landed like a physical blow. Declan thought of Brianna, thought of her kids, thought of how easily Zara could. "That's what I thought," Zara said, reading his face. "So here's what happens. You pack your things, you move away quietly, and you forget you ever knew me. Or Portland becomes very dangerous for everyone you love." Declan left that night, not because he was a coward, but because he believed her. In his truck, hands shaking, he called a number he'd memorized from Patricia Wexler's call. "Mrs. Wexler, it's Declan Ross, I believe you, and I think I know how to prove it." 3 months later, Declan stood outside a Salem courtroom with Patricia Wexler, 2 detectives, and a prosecutor who'd reopened Cameron Wexler's case. They had the neighbors' security footage that Patricia had preserved. They had Declan's recorded conversation from that final night. They had testimony from Zara's other victims, 3 men who'd been too scared or ashamed to come forward until now. And they had something else, Zara's next target, a firefighter named Marcus she'd met at a support group for burn survivors. Marcus, who Declan had warned just in time. When the police arrested Zara, she'd smiled that same cold smile and asked for a lawyer. The trial took 6 months. Zara's defense attorney tried the sympathy angle, tried to make the scars speak louder than the evidence. But the jury saw through it. Arson, attempted murder, fraud, stalking. The charges piled up across multiple states. Cameron Wexler was released 3 days before Christmas. Declan met him outside the prison, unsure what to say to a man whose life had been destroyed by the same woman who'd nearly destroyed his. "Thank you," Cameron said simply. "No one else believed me." "I'm sorry it took so long." Cameron looked older than his years, marked by everything he'd endured. "Is it over now?" Declan thought about Zara, locked away in a psychiatric facility for the criminally insane, still maintaining that she was the real victim, still believing her own twisted narrative. "Yeah," Declan said finally, "it's over." He drove back to Portland as the sun set, past the neighborhood where he'd once lived, past the craftsman house where Zara had built her elaborate trap. He'd moved across the city now, closer to his sister, trying to rebuild a life that felt honest again. That night, Brianna came over with wine and her kids, who crawled all over him demanding stories. In the chaos and laughter, Declan felt something loosen in his chest, the tight knot of fear and betrayal that had lived there for months. "You okay?" Brianna asked quietly while the kids played. "Getting there," Declan said, and for the first time in a long time he meant it. Love, he'd learned, wasn't always what it appeared to be. Sometimes the most convincing stories were the most dangerous lies. But he'd also learned something else, that the truth, however painful, was always worth fighting for. And that some scars, the ones you couldn't see, took the longest to heal.